I can talk about the Gaunt's Ghosts books because I have read a shitload of them in the last month because it's been a good thing to keep me sane from everything else going on.
Why? What's been going on?
Oh, nothing major. Don't look online. Don't watch the news.
Well, I've been in a coma for the last 6 months, so let me just see. Oh God! Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah, it real bad. Welcome to Preferred Enemies, the Warhammer 40k podcast that's just about a little bit of everything. I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
And Richard.
No Dennis with us this week, and that is because he is celebrating his birthday with family. Yes, Woohoo. Dennis turns 50 this year. He's officially an old man. I can't say anything. I'm only a couple years behind him, so.
Yeah, same.
So
my knees are hurting. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. We're all young souls in old vehicles. But one thing that is coming out, will be out on shelves by the time you hear this, is the new Crusade Nachman Gauntlet book. And with all the narrative stuff that you guys have been doing lately, it felt like this would be the episode that we would want to talk about that. But Dennis is out, and he did want to be with us when we talked about it. He specifically requested that. And I will say, just very briefly, there are a couple of really interesting things there. We'll get into more detail about it in a future episode, but the two things I definitely want to point out, one is, actually, I guess there's three things I'll, again, touch on briefly. First off, some rules for using epic heroes and actually getting buffs for them in a Crusade campaign, which has normally not been a thing. Epic heroes are kind of pointless in Crusade, and this actually gives you an option and to do things with them and kind of figure out how they would play in a larger Crusade army. So that's really cool. Second thing is we have a campaign map where you're actually taking over parts of a city. So for someone who's a huge fan of urban conquest campaigns, I like this. It's not as flexible as an urban conquest map, but it has somewhat of a similar feel to it. And the third thing, the thing that really surprised me, was a return of a Deep Strike mishap table.
Yeah, that's the thing that I didn't realize that I'd missed. like when we it was like I don't know if we talked about it when we talked about like old mechanics, but like it's always one of those things that was kind of annoying and weird, like this. But reading through the table, I'm like, yeah, I kind of missed this. I kind of missed the gambling aspect of like, okay, we're gonna try to deep strike, but you're traveling through the warp, so something bad may happen. You might just lose this unit, So I don't know. It was cool seeing it come back.
Yeah, and I will say it's not as bad as the old. I think we did briefly mention it and talk about like the feels bad of, oh look, I rolled the dice screwed me, my unit is destroyed. It like landed on another unit and it's just wiped out.
My 10-man Terminator squad is just gone.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but you'll definitely if you have a mishap, you'll feel some pain. But we'll get into the details of that in a future episode. Again, Dennis wanted to be here when we talked about that. So, as we are at a spot where we have a book, but we're not going to talk about it yet. And we are waiting for whenever that next step in the roadmap is, which we know is Emperor's Children. We're kind of in a little in between. I hesitate to say filler episode, but it is kind of that. So we're just going to talk about things that are going on in our particular hobby. This may be of interest to you. It may not be, and that's totally fine. We do a little bit of everything for everybody. So one thing though we do want to talk about is, as I don't say as always, but we do like to talk about some of the news and new releases. And the last thing that was revealed as a new model technically for Horus Heresy, but I think, Kevin, this is right up your wheelhouse, is the new Angron and LoeTaKa Sarin models.
I like it. I know a lot of people don't like it, like, oh, he looks too skinny and stuff like that. I love it as a midpoint because you've got Horus Heresy Primarch Angron, which is one of the earlier ones and probably like not as good as like some of the later Primarch models, but shows him, as the brutal like Primarch that he is, fighting and killing, stuff like that. This is him like transformed, but he's still like much more of a human still. He's standing upright. He's, lean and a lot closer to that original Primarch model than he is like the hunched over bestial thing that he is in 40K. I like that it's different. I think it looks cool. The wings are going to be a nightmare to travel with him, just like they were with Fulcrum Transfigured. This is a model I'm going to have to pick up at some point because this thing's really good.
Yeah.
Like I wants it.
I take it this is a model you are not going to kit bash with Tau, though. You're going to leave this one as is, right?
No, this is this will be Angron. But like I really like this. I also really like that they gave him they gave him the black sword or whatever from the Horus Heresy series, so it is like specifically that weapon, but they gave him a sword and an axe, so this will be super easy to proxy in 40K if you want to.
Oh yeah.
It looks really good.
And then a fan favorite character for many people, LoeTaKa Sarin.
LoeTaKa is like the one World Eater character that people actually like because she's not just a she's also ruthless, but she's not just a bloodthirsty killer like all the like Karn or Angron, like that. Like there's a lot more to her character, so a lot of the World Eaters fandom has glommed onto her as like the character from Horus Heresy. It's just a cool looking model. Like, again, cool model. Glad they have her. I don't know exactly what I would use her for, but I don't know. I've got ideas.
I will say it is a part of the fandom people get a little bit weird over, but
it is, but I wasn't going to mention that.
I'll mention it because, let's be fair, it's people. Yeah. I mean, but also a lot of people who cover the lore and a lot of people who've read the books do appreciate that she is a fantastic example of a strong female character who takes no shit from anyone. I mean, she has stared down World Eater Marines on her ship and cowed them into listening to her.
And you would have to be, like, if you're going to be the commander of, like, the flagship for a Legion, you have to be that way. You have to be undaunted by all of the hijinks of Space Marines around you. So,
yes.
No, she's a cool character. I'm glad they gave her a model. But yeah, that Angron is super sweet.
I am going to wish that they give you a decal sheet that just has one decal and it's the bloody handprint that's like on her uniform, because I would not want to have to try to do justice for that by like it's going to look like the worst Thanksgiving hand turkey if I tried freehanding it.
That's fair.
But no, she like the sculpting and paint job they did on the sample model, it's really good. And yeah, the books that have LoeTaKa in them are fantastic. And we will never not fire the Ursus clause on this podcast. So, and but that's not the only chaosy thing that has been discussed. They also announced that, and going back to our last episode, we have the roadmap that is an actual roadmap, and the fact that the next 4 codexes, starting with Emperor's Children, are the chaos, like god-specific legions. And to celebrate this, not only is there the like regular edition of the codex and the collector's edition of the codex, there is a special, very limited edition version of the codex. Kind of a throwback to the old collector's editions they used to do, where they came with all the extra gubbins, like objective markers and things like this. This is in a slipcase with an interesting, like, cracked separation point and like absolutely beautiful cover for it. in white with like the Emperor's Children and Fulgrim in silhouette. That quote on the back of the book, which is just horrifying, unless you really like body horror: "I will make a banquet of your flesh and your spirit, and when I tire of that, we'll play a new game." From Fulgrim. And you get datasheet cards, stratagem cards. So like you get the combination of like the data card pack and the codex. You get 6 objective markers, a pack of 5 art cards, which is something I don't think they've really done with many of the codexes before.
Yeah.
All in like a slipcase and hardback folder. But then what's really interesting is something I referred to on our Discord as an artifact of FOMO, and that is a chaos medallion, like a gold chaos medallion piece. Like you get a piece for Slaanesh and the Emperor's Children. And there are specifically 4 pieces, one for each Chaos Legion, each god-specific Chaos Legion, that are all apparently to be connected by magnets to make one whole.
It is really funny because like the day that this was announced, we were having a conversation on our Discord, patreon.com/preferred enemies.
Yeah.
And we were making fun of FOMO collector's edition codexes, like unrelated to this. Like this was before this announcement. And like I have a couple of limited edition codexes, and I won't say I regret the purchases because at the time they were worth it. But yeah, the lifespan of codexes in 40K and like the usefulness of the extra gubbins and like the little trinkets are very limited and most often not worth the price. This is neat, but this is going to be way more than it needs to be. Like I don't even know what they've been charging for other limited edition codexes, but I mean, this is going to be, it's 60 for a regular codex. I could see this being 200, and that's crazy. I don't know.
So the collector's edition Astra Militarum Codex, which is still available, like they haven't sold out, and that collector's edition is just the book. It does not include any gubbins, data cards, etc. Is 110 US.
I want to say, and I don't remember exactly, I want to say like the Khorne Demonkin special edition codex, which had like limited edition, which had the coins and like the little skull tokens and all of this stuff. Yeah, it was like 150, 160. So that was 8 years ago.
Yeah,
I could see this being $200, and I think this is worth it. Like I don't think 65 is worth it for a codex. In my opinion, but this is a neat idea. I like they're doing all the Chaos Legions in a row. Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that they're kind of doing the thing to connect them. But like, the medallion of FOMO, like this feels kind of scummy. Like
it feels icky, I don't
like it.
As someone who there's been a couple of I bought I want to say it was like the 7th edition Tau Codex, like that was in a nice slip case similar to this and had similar markers. I sold it because it wasn't it wasn't useful after the edition, and given that we have been seeing more and more codexes that have day 1 errata, Astra Militarum, like the 2 most recent, Astra Militarum and Eldari, both had like 0 day errata.
And they've basically admitted that that point costs are not correct in the codex. Like every single codex that's come out has been like, these points aren't right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a neat book. Like I love the cover. Like I love the color pattern for it. Like with it mostly being white and then like the splashes of color, that looks freaking awesome. I just don't think it's going to be worth the price point. Even if the World Eaters one comes out and is really cool, like I'm not buying it. I'm not spending that money.
Now, I will say, like, there is a way they could do something like this where I would think it would be worth it, and that's if it was not a codex, but instead reprints of like older material showing the history. Like they a while back, they did some reprints. Like they did like an Index Astartes, Index Chaotica, Index White Dwarf, like showing the history of stuff.
I have those on my bookcase behind me.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them myself. And even before that, there was a Black Library book that was like the Index Chaotica that was all written like in universe of like the 4 gods. And the artwork's absolutely beautiful. It's long out of print. A reprint of the god-specific section of that, and a reprint of like content from the old like Slaves to Darkness and Lost in the Damned books, like a collected edition of Chaos lore with the medallion and maybe objective markers, because objective markers are something you can use in a lot of different games. I think those would have like a kind of a long-term value, and I think even having the medallion of FOMO in that set, having this something as like a deep lore book, like, are you a big fan of the Emperor's Children in Slaanesh and you want to learn more about it, or have a neat art piece on your shelf, that would be fine. Yeah. Tying it to rules and the fact that it's like data card, like data cards themselves are like $35. A codex is $60, and those aren't collector's edition. We know that collector's editions tend to be almost twice as much. Yeah. Even outside the gubbins, you'd be pushing 200. And and the fact that it's a book that, based on current trends, probably is incorrect, probably has something they'll have to errata in. It has point costs in it that we know will not be correct, that they will have, that they weren't even probably accurate at the time the book was written. We have pushed for a while that rules should be free, especially if you're making all your money. If you're making your money off of models and the price of models keeps going up, and you are constantly shifting rules because you have decided to chase balance, which is fine. That is a choice to be made, and I think there's value in doing that, especially if you're trying to cater to a competitive scene. But if you're going to do that, rules should be free. And if we say that rules should be free, there's no way we can turn around and say, but you should totally buy this $200 set of rules that are useless.
Okay, so oh, wow. Okay, I'm very annoyed. But now I feel really old. So I found an old Spiky Bits article where they talked about when the Khorne Demon Codex was released, which, by the way, was released almost 10 years ago at this point. March 20th, 2015.
Oh God, yeah.
The Skull Taker edition 10 years ago was $165.
Oh yeah, there's no way this is less than 200. Absolutely none.
I don't regret that purchase, but oof. Because I still have that codex. That codex is awesome, but yeah.
So as neat as a thing as it is, this is absolutely on my do not recommend. Like, if you're gonna do it, I can't stop you, and it's your money. I'm not your parents. I'm not your bankers. I'm not your accountant. Kevin's not your accountant. Kevin's not even our accountant. He is an accountant. We're not in charge of your budget. If it's the way you want to spend your money, go forth and do. But
I mean, honestly, I would say spend the money on models. Like buy the, especially for Emperor's Children, there's all these new units and all these great looking new models. Spend the money on that instead. Rules are temporary, models are forever.
Also, like, if you're gonna spend like the $200 or so, and you're that big an Emperor's Children fan, you're gonna probably buy the army box to get like the new Lord and the new Noise Marines, the new Tormentors and Fractors, and that's gonna be $230. And you'll still get a copy of the Codex. You won't need another copy of the Codex. So yeah, it's like, spend your money there. If you're already going to do that and you want to buy this, buy the Combat Patrol. Save the money for when Lucius comes out. $200 will probably buy you Fulgrim and get change back. It's like there's better things to spend your money on than this book. I like. It's neat, but I cannot in good conscience recommend this as a purchase. And I hate to say that, but I got to go with that. And
I mean, maybe they will surprise us and this will come out and it'll be $120, and then
there's no way. There's no way.
If it would be $120, this would be a soft, like, don't buy, but like, it's much better. But like, this is going to be $200, and I cannot recommend it at that price point.
Yeah, and especially. So Rob, the Honest Wargamer, recently did a video addressing somebody's concerns that is Age of Sigmar dying because tournament, in my local area, player count is down, and he pointed out no, if you look at the stats, player count's up all around. But one point that this person brought up, and he also agreed with, was that one of the problems that is hitting Age of Sigmar, and I think it does hit 40K as well, is the rules being locked behind paywalls, and I with 40K I can't disagree there either, and especially with I'm going to be playing Blood Angels in our next narrative league, and spoiler, I apart from our digital copies that we get for review, I don't have the Space Marine or Blood Angels codex, and I don't want to drop $90 on those books. But if I don't, I can't even use their official army app. I can build a force, but I can't use it in game. And that's where I get the most use out of it, is in their app, because it's nice to not have to lug physical books around. But it's like at some point I've got to decide, am I going to pull the trigger for ease of access? But God, I don't want to spend the $90 on books that, like, the Space Marine Codex isn't accurate anymore because they added a bunch of stuff in the last balance data slate.
Right. Well, it's so frustrating because we've harped on this, so like you're hearing us repeat ourselves. But spending the money, having everything locked in an app with no way to purchase stuff in the app, the only way to do it is to buy the book and use the code. That is insane. Give me a $30 digital code to unlock the rules. That would still be price gouging. Like, it should be free, but give me the option to not have to buy a $60 codex and then a $30 supplement. It blows my mind that there's not a way for them, that they've not pulled the trigger on selling access in the app.
You want to get every single Warhammer player to subscribe to Warhammer Plus? Include access to the rules with the app. You can download the app for free, and you can build one or two little forces, but you don't see any of the rules and stuff like that. You want access to all the rules? Just attach it to the Warhammer Plus, and I guarantee you, subscribership would shoot through the roof.
Yeah. It just, I don't know. We're very much in a new era of publishing, and GW is definitely still acting as if they are in the older era where it's everything has to be published in books, and it's, I don't know, they have to reconcile that at some point. They're going to have to change their business model.
Right. I saw this and I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. There is no way in hell I would ever buy it, and I can't. So do not recommend. Don't fall for the FOMO. Don't be swayed by the siren song. Ooh, but if I get all four of them, I can make this one piece. No, don't.
And also they make these things so limited, they sell out so quickly. There is no guarantee you're going to be able to get all four.
True.
That's the other thing. It's how awful would it be just looking at the medallion that they have? So let's say World Eaters is the last one, because that's on the bottom. Let's say you get all three of them, and then you're unable to get the World Eaters special edition. Now you have now you're missing out on that, and you have to go pay scalper prices for it. This is, we saw this with Death in the End when they released the limited editions of that, and scalping was so. It's exactly what's going to happen here. It's exactly what's going to happen with this. There are people who want this or just want the token that are going to pay exuberant prices from scalpers just to get the last piece. And no, that sucks. Don't. The only way to win that game is to not play.
Right.
So
yeah. That's not to say that Games Workshop won't get our money in other ways, because Kevin, I know they just hit you with a set of pre-orders.
Yeah, they did. They finally did it.
And not even for 40K. That's the thing that gets me.
Oh, so this week, yesterday as day of recording, High Elves went up for pre-order for the Old World, and High Elves are the reason I play Warhammer. Like, that's the first army that I got for fantasy. And then eventually, like, when I realized that nobody played fantasy, that's when I switched over to 40K. So High Elves are like my original army. And they are so cool. They have such good models. It is so good to see them coming back to the old world and all of the new stuff that's out. Like, High Elves are in a much better spot than most of the other old world armies in that they got a lot of new plastics in the 2010s. So, you know, the new Swordmasters of Hoeth and the White Lions and the Reaver models are all updated. Like the Lotharian Spearmen or Seaguard are also like updated to plastic and newer sculpts and stuff. Reading through the Arcane Journal this week where they were talking about like how they designed the couple of new character models and remastered some of the kits to add in options. Like, I'm super excited for this release. High Elves are just a very cool fantasy staple. And they're just a cool looking army. Even the generic like archers, which the High Elf archer kit is probably 30 years old at this point. Still a good looking infantry, base infantry model. Like, it still looks so good. It has none of the like lovable goofiness of like Tomb King skeletons from the 90s, which are bad, objectively bad, but they're like lovably kind of goofy. No, these look good. Like, considering that these sculpts are, like I said, close to 30 years old, they still look really good. And you get them in a block, like, there's High Elves are like I said, High Elves are the reason that I was excited for the old world. They were the reason I got into Warhammer. I didn't buy the battalion box because I don't need more spearmen and archers, but yeah, I spent some money this weekend on characters and the Arcane Journal and some of the new units. And there's more stuff coming in the next, there'll be another release wave in a few weeks, I'm sure. I don't know. I love the High Elves. So I know we used to make fun of it though, like we wouldn't talk about Squarebase. So the fact that I finally get to talk about Squarebase is makes me happy.
Well, and one of the things, it's like, I wanted to get in with High Elves back when like the Island of Blood kit, like the Island of Blood set came out, and like a couple of things about fantasy at the time frustrated me because that box did not make a legal, you couldn't make a legal force out of it. And in fact, they didn't even include points. Like, there was no way you could figure out, like, there was no way to build a legal force out of that box. And so I got everything assembled. I primed it. I had every intention of doing anything with it. And this was also around the time that, let's be honest, fantasy was dying.
Yes. Oh yeah. Because that was the launch box for 8th edition. Yeah, for 8th edition. Well, and also the hilarious part of that is not only could you not field a complete army with it, you also got like twice as many points for High Elves as you did for Skaven. Like, because you got like roughly an equal number of models, which meant that you had like double what the Skaven player got.
Right.
Because High Elves are the elite army in fantasy old world. So it was a good product if you were a High Elf player, but yeah, it was not a good starter box.
Right. As opposed to, was it Battle for Skull Pass, which is considered by many to be like the high watermark for starter box, like that, and Blackreach, which came out roughly around I think Skull Pass might be a bit older, like by a couple of years, but those are considered like the high watermark for getting like the best value, the most playability out of starter boxes. And, they've never quite hit that high since. They've had boxes that are good, but not nearly that affordable.
Yeah. Skull Pass was 2006 for 7th edition fantasy, which was, I think, actually after Blackreach. Let's see here.
Assault on Blackreach was the 5th edition set, came out in 2008. Yeah. So it was a year before.
Okay.
If that was 2007. Yeah.
But like, you're exactly right. That was the high water mark of ease of getting into the games. That was also the time that like they were doing the Realms of Magic for fantasy, and then they were doing Apocalypse for 40K. So it was super easy to buy the great value starter boxes, buy a couple APOC boxes of tanks or crisis suits or stuff like that, and boom, you have a 2,000 point army after only spending like $250-$300. Like, there were some amazing deals at that time. Basically, what I'm saying is that if I had the ability to time travel, what I would do is go back and buy more from that era, and not fix any of the other problems.
But like one of the other things, like, because I need another mini game, like I need an extra hole in the head. But I like Old World has like it keeps kind of like nudging me in a way that like most of the other games don't. And I think one of the things I do like about it is it seems like it's fantasy with a lot of the issues that plagued like some of the later editions of fantasy corrected. It also doesn't feel like, based on like battle reps and kind of sample army lists and things like that it doesn't require the ridiculous number of models that you often had. Like, unit sizes seem more reasonable. They're like 12, 16, 18 strong rather than like 40, 50.
Yes. No, it feels to me like Old World, again, like, not to compare everything back to 40K, but it's kind of plays
it's what
more
we
like
about, so it's
it plays more like 40K does. Like, it's still blocks of infantry and stuff like that, but old fantasy, like 8th edition fantasy, would be like, you put monsters on the field, whether that be like a named character or like your giant griffins or a Lord on Dragon, and then you built 2 or 3 blocks of just huge infantry around it. And that was kind of the game, is moving these huge blocks of infantry to position the monsters to do all the damage. It feels like now it's the units are smaller. The points, I think, went up a little bit. The game itself is played at 2,000 points, which is a little bit lower than the standard fantasy games. Yeah. So it feels like it slots more into the size and scope of a standard 40K game, which I think is smart, because you don't have the super high barriers to entry. The battalion boxes that they have released for all of these factions are fantastic. The only reason I didn't pick up the High Elf Battalion box is because I just don't need more archers. That said, at some point, I will probably pick up another battalion box. It's like, I don't need it right now, but at some point, I might pick one up. It's a good deal. It's crazy to me that they've managed to basically turn the Old World into like their most affordable game, like, or their most like bang for your buck game.
Because like you look at, it's one of the things where you look at the boxes, like the cost of boxes of units, and at first, like it hits a little bit, because you're like, holy crap, why am I spending like $85 for, like, I'm looking at the orcs and goblin tribes right now, for example, because I've got all the armies open on different tabs, and like orcs and goblin tribes, a mob of night goblins for $85. That's way more expensive than a 40K kit. And then you look at the description and realize, oh yeah, this is 40 goblins. You're getting 2 blocks of 20 out of that. Like, you don't need, one of the problems in the old version of fantasy, besides the fact that it was 2,500 points as a standard game, which was a high bar of entry, and from what I've heard, like Old World plays fine at like 1,250. Like, you can actually play it at like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. It still plays well. Like Empire, oh yeah, you buy a box of Empire and it's like 15, 20 guys, and you need like 3 of those for a unit. And now it's like Empire State Troops, it's $85, but you get 30 of them that can be fielded as 2 units of 15, and that's totally fine. And it's like, oh yeah, this is like cost effective. It feels like it's bigger outlays, but you get much bigger chunks of your army, as opposed to paying like $65 for a squad of 10 Marines or something, or like $50 for 10 Cadians.
The thing that I will say that I like the way that they're designing the game. You get your army rules in the Forces of Fantasy or the Ravening Hordes book. So you buy one book and you get everything for that side of the game. So it's a much smaller outlay than buying individual codexes. And then the Arcane Journals, which are slim books that are much cheaper, only add in like special lists and like detachments, which you don't have to use like to play that. And it gives you like fun ways to do cool things and build themed lists that aren't better than like the other ways to play. It's just like, okay, if you want to build a trace army, here's how you build an all trace army. If you want to build all Sea Guard, here's how you build an all Sea Guard list for high elves. If you want to build a specific type of Empire army, here's how you do it. I just think that's a better system than like the Codex updates. Like the cost is easier. They sell these as EPUBs, so they freaking know how to do digital distribution. It's just better. Like it just feels like a better way of putting the rules out for these armies for Old World.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we've talked about is like, what is the outlay? Like what do you have to spend to play? So like the core rule book is $70, which is $5 more than a 40K core book.
Sure.
So it's comparable. Like, you mentioned the faction, like the massive, like the order versus destruction, basically. $52. That's less than a codex for four or more armies worth of rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're at 120, effectively 122. And then you can honestly start off with like a battalion box, which is 185. And then usually like a character. And sometimes you can kit bash a character out of the battalion box. I have seen lists for like the Chaos, like the Warriors of Chaos, where, you just buy the Chaos battalion box and put like, it comes with 2 chariots. You make one of the chariots like a lord on chariot. And then you like, you can use one of the other models in there as like somebody on foot. You can build like a 1,500 or 2,000 point list out of that, depending on how you kit it out.
They even made the joke in the Arcane Journal for High Elves. The battalion comes with 2 chariots, and they can be built as a White Lion chariot or a regular chariot. And they're like, well, if you build the White Lion chariot, now you just have 4 extra horses flying around. And I'm like, that's you can put them on your. I think they've said you put them in your High Elf horse racetrack or something. I was like, that's funny. But like, you could kit bash those to like put a character on a steed. Like, you have like options. It's very easy to convert this stuff.
Right. And something else that they've kind of pushed on the hobby stuff, and something that you can't do in 40K, but you can absolutely do in fantasy because you are dealing with blocks of troops, is filler. Like,
yes,
you don't have to have every model on the base. If you want to do like a row of like kind of guys on just the outside of the block, and then the middle you build some like little diorama, you can do that, and that's fine. They encourage it.
Yeah.
And especially because this is what I would consider one of the more Forge Worldy games, because it is kind of handled by their specialist game division, the way Horus Heresy is. And Horus Heresy is one where I don't think it's that affordable to get into, because the standard game size that they're pushing is 3,000 points.
Yeah. It's better now that most of this is being moved to plastic, but yes, Horus Heresy is still a much higher barrier of entry.
Right. I do think it has a good set of like starter options. They still sell the Age of Darkness set, which is probably one of the best purchases to get into a game like that, but it's still $315, and you need to get a faction rule book as well, which the army books there are $62.50. No, $70. Okay, for the Legions one, so for Horse Heresy it's like $70. $70 for the core rule, $70 for the faction book, and they are thick tomes, I will say that. And they give you a lot of like the same generic stuff. If you want to play Solar Auxilia or Mechanicum, they're also they're a little bit cheaper. The Mechanicum one's only $52. The Forces of the Imperium, which is anything that's not specifically Space Marines, is $62.50. So not that far off from from Old World, but I do think the cost of buying an army, because there's a lot more focus on vehicles and war machines, that does get more expensive. But Old World, yeah, it's weird that Old World is the most cost effective. Yeah, it just like blows my mind.
And like, there's definitely a nostalgia for seeing all of these older models. Like that's the thing that I wasn't kind of prepared for myself, is like, even when they released like the Orcs and Goblins or the Warriors of Chaos factions that I was like not particularly interested in buying, I would go look at the pre-release page and I'm like, I remember those models. I remember that. That's cool. Like, I don't know. It seems fun. So I like the Old World.
And the models are older for sure. And they show it in some cases. And there's been a couple of models that they've re-released that maybe they really shouldn't have, like the Bretonnian Lord with Great Weapon, who they had never released, and it's like, ooh, I see why. He's had some work done. We're just gonna say that. Knows his resin surgeon a bit too well. But yeah, it's like it's one of these things that's like I don't need it. I have so much on my plate right now already, but I'm good. I'm good, but yet, ooh, it's like, part of me wants to do it, but so far I'm holding strong. I'm holding strong. I have a different fantasy game, because one thing we did want to talk about is hobby progress, and I'll get to that in a second. So I mean, we've talked about a bunch about like stuff you can buy, stuff you have bought. What are you guys working on right now?
So, Richard, do you want to go first, or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll go first. Because I haven't done quite as much as probably either of you. I have been, eternally painting orcs. that just be the way it is. Right now, in fact, right this minute, I'm painting some Storm Boys and just getting those started. Like just a little unit of 5 Storm Boys.
Nice.
And also painting my war boss in mega armor and a mega armor Big Mech with the custom force field. And then as far as like assembling, I did work on my toxic trait. I can fix him. I took Mr. Big Pants, Inquisitor Codexes. I picked up the new model and picked up a Age of Sigmar, the Stormcast Eternal Lord Commander Bastion Carthalos.
Okay.
And basically just melded those two together using like some of the detail bits from Codexes, but on Carthalos's body.
Nice.
and kind of reposed him a little bit, and I'm like super happy with how he turned out. He looks like what I think a big ass awesome Inquisitor with a giant hammer is supposed to look like. So I'm waiting for good weather to like get him primed, and I'm really looking forward to getting him painted.
Yeah, the work in progress photos you posted on our Discord like look awesome. So I think it's a really great conversion.
Now his proportions look correct. His pants look good. No, and yes, again, another ad for join our Discord if you want to see like works in progress photos of like the stuff Richard did, because you absolutely, like, it may be your toxic trait, but you actually did it. You actually fixed him. Nah, he looks great. You did a good job.
And also painting the Olflac Blackhawk model, the Black Library Orc War Boss.
Nice.
So that's for the most part. And then I did finally order and get the Warhammer Plus Inquisitor model.
Yeah.
Because they look cool. And want to put him together, and we'll have... And I need to put together, I've got like a couple of boxes of inquisitorial agents, and also wound up with a box, an exaction squad.
Nice. So just putting together like an Imperial agents force.
Yep.
Just drop into other things.
Yeah. Like, I actually want to see if I can put together, like, get, like, 1,000 points so that I could theoretically run them on their own. But mostly, yeah, it'll be just various stuff to drop in with my Grey Knights or my Death Watch.
Nice.
So that's pretty much all I've had going on.
So my hobby progress has kind of been on 2 tracks. Been trying to build. I've started to build some of my Votann stuff with an eye towards this year's grand narrative, because the idea is that Dennis and I talked about both playing Votann. There's a couple other people from our Chaos War group that were interested in doing Votann this year. So I've got an idea and I'm kind of working on that. However, in the middle of that, the Death Korps of Krieg box came to me. So I've been distracted by that more recently. I will say this. The models for the Death Korps of Krieg are fantastic. They are old school, like 5th, 6th edition modular. Like, it is a torso, arms, and then the legs. You don't have like complete posability with the legs, but you have a lot more flexibility with how you position the arms, how you're putting the heads on there. Like, I was really impressed by how modular the infantry models were. And then on the field artillery, this was something that I was not expecting. The field artillery, as long as you don't glue it together, is completely modular. You'd basically just pop out the top of the barrel for the long Earthshaker battery, or whatever they're calling it, for the big cannon. You can swap out for the shorter, like, mortar cannon, and like it just slots in and clicks into place. And then you can pull that entire barrel out and swap it for like the rocket battery or the other one. I forget what it is now. But like they just slot in. So like as long as you don't glue them, you can get all 4 of the field weapons out of one kit, which is awesome because they always change what's good. They rotate like which better option is better. So you don't have to buy multiples of the kit to get all the different weapon options. So I was very excited about that. The other thing that I kind of did is I started looking at like what motor pool I wanted to run with this, and going back to like the Siege of Vrax and some of the older like Forge World stuff. They run a lot of like Malkadors as their main tanks. They're in Legends, so like they'll still have rules. And like I'm not looking to build this competitively. I'm looking to build this for taking to like something like the Grand Narrative. So as I was doing this, they came out with the Malkador Infernus, which is a Malkador tank with a Titan flamer strapped to it. So I can't think of anything more Death Korps of Krieg than that.
No,
so
that would be it. Yeah,
I picked up the Malkador Infernus. I've picked up a Voldar tank destroyer with like the giant Titan laser on it, and I've picked up a couple of Malkadors to run with this. And then I'm looking at the Horus Heresy Leman Russes, which are like the environmentally sealed like Mars pattern, which are what Krieg runs. So I'm going to look to see if that actually will work to proxy as like a 40k Leman Russ. But yeah, I think I might actually have my guard army like 2,000 points accumulated and like mostly put together at this point. Obviously the command squad and like the heavy weapon squads come out next week. So I'm going to pick some of those up. But like, I think I basically have this guard army assembled, and then I just need to paint it. And I've got some ideas on quick and dirty paint schemes for them. So that's like the 40k side of it. The other thing that I've been working on hobby progress wise, and again, posted pictures on Discord, I have been 3D printing weapons and stuff for Midwest Conquest. And yeah, I printed a multi-melta, which I'm actually like was working on right before this, of like sanding all the parts down and making sure they fit. Thing is 42 inches long, like from like the barrel to the handle. It is massive. It is bigger than the if you've seen the bolt gun that I've printed in years past, it's bigger than that. So that's going to be one of the prizes for Midwest Conquest. I've got a few other items that I want to print off specifically for like the narrative event. I've got a couple prizes and props and stuff like that for the narrative that I think are going to be fun. Really excited. Yeah. So that's what I've been working on, is kind of bouncing back and forth between padding out my Death Korps Krieg army and 3D printing stuff for Midwest Conquest.
Yeah, and speaking of the Lehman Russ tanks, like the horse heresy pattern, like the Mars pattern ones, I think one of our local players is working on a Krieg army, and he has one or two of those Lehman Russes, and then found some like 3D printed sponson bits on Etsy that he was able to get to attach to him. So you can. It is silly that the tanks are built because of the way 40K is done with points, that there's no reason not to take the sponsons, even though they don't come on there by default. But if you want sponsons, there are perfectly compatible bits that people have made to use.
Good to know, because that was kind of the like one thing where I'm like, I don't know if I want to buy these because they don't have the sponsons. So
yeah, because that's kind of where I was looking to, because I've got a Trader Guard army in mind as one of my projects for after the Eldari are done. And one of the things I need for it is a motor pool, and I would like to have at least a couple of tanks in there. And I'm trying to like, do I buy the current Lehman Russ kit, or do I buy like the Mars pattern kit from Horus Heresy for a slightly different look? I will probably just end up going with the standard Russ, but it was always there as kind of an option. But it's like, but the sponson thing, but that's been addressed. So yeah,
well, that's good.
So yeah, you shouldn't have any problem with that. As far as projects for me, one is the Eldari army for Midwest Conquest. And just to give you an update on Midwest Conquest, all of the events are now available for registration. We mentioned the narrative event, I think, last episode. That's already a third full. So you may want to, if you want to get in, register as soon as you can. Our Age of Sigmar event is a third full. Grand Tournament, I think, is just shy of a quarter full right now, but I know that will get more full as we get closer and closer to May. Bolt Action is halfway full already. If you are into if you are into World War II gaming, that one is selling out fast. Beer Hammer is 3/4 full already.
Yes,
people want to get their drinking game on, so that one is filling up soon. We still have 10 spots available for the Night Joust, so that is like all these events still have spaces to register. You have until May, but don't wait until May. Just get in. We'd love to see you there. It's in Independence, Missouri, near Kansas City, right off I-70. So if you're driving in from the east or the west, it's easy to get to. But yes, this is an army that we are raffling off for Midwest Conquest, and it's going to have a lot of options, barring any further donations we get. Because right now, I'm using everything that we've received from Games Workshop for doing like Eldari previews, which I was originally going to be my own Eldari army, but I had other things to get to, and I never got to it. And so now it is being converted into the raffle army. And so we have like all the new Phoenix Lords and all the new Aspect Warriors. We have all the new kits from the previous Eldari refresh, which includes the Avatar of Cain, which includes the new Shining Spears, which includes the Dark Reapers, which includes Magan Ra. It includes new Guardians, the new Shroud Runners and Rangers, and the new Autarch. And also I've added a Farseer and some Warlocks to that, and bought a Combat Patrol back before they switched the Combat Patrol to the one that isn't as cool. So there's like a Wraith Lord and Windrider bikes, which I don't know if you noticed from our last episode, those potentially are really good right now. And a box of Wraith Guard to mix in as well. So this is you're gonna have a lot of options for this army. What I started with was the new stuff that came out, because I wanted to get working on that while it was fresh. And also, I know those are going to be the hardest models to paint because they're the most detailed, other than the Avatar. The Avatar, that one, I'm not afraid of painting it. I just know like I'm gonna want to do a really good job on it. But the rest of the rest of the Eldari line, apart from, oh my god, so many Spirit Stones. I think I mentioned that last episode as well. That one's not as fun. Also, this army, we're gonna paint it up in same hand colors, so red bodies, white helmets. I enjoy painting red. Painting Blood Angels was a lot of fun, and I want to continue doing that. So we're going to continue with red there. But for these, I've got like all different colors. So like the Fire Dragons are orange and yellow. So I've been really working on on doing like doing my base coat of color with zenithal, so like doing a darker orange underneath and then a lighter orange on top, and that takes care of so much highlighting. It really speeds up the process. I still do like fine edge highlighting and things like that, but it makes the look for these, getting them to a point where they're tabletop ready much faster. I've got the swooping hawks and the warp spiders worked on. They're more like base color stage, but like I'm finishing up details and basing on Fuegan and the fire dragons. Now I know last episode I said, hey, yeah, I'm working on fire dragons. You know, that means I haven't gotten terribly far. That's because the other thing I've been working on, because I have a hobby ADHD, which is another reason why I'm like, I fear getting into Old World because they would draw me away from the other things I'm trying to get done. But I got in my first game of Age of Sigmar, finally, after 4 editions, and having an army for like 2.5 of them and never having a good chance to play. I finally got in my first like 1,000-point game of Age of Sigmar, and I'll talk about that in a second. That's that other fantasy thing that I wanted to get to. But I played the game, and then I'm like, you know what? I want to play around with some of the other options I have. And on my shelf were 4 boxes. I had I had 2 boxes, or no, well, 5 technically, because I had 2 boxes of Melisai, which are like the snake-bodied women who can be either spears or bows. I had 2 boxes of Doomfire Warlocks, which are, you know, guys on horses, and then I had the leftover sprue of Kinerai, which are the winged gals from, God, what was it? Like, wasn't Arena of Pain. It was like one of the box sets they did that was like half He Knights of Slaanesh, half Daughters of Cain.
Yeah.
So finally, I've been sitting on those for you. They're old enough. They're in the old white Age of Sigmar boxes, like the first, second edition boxes. So, you know, it took me a while to get around to them. But I got them, everything but 1 box of Doomfire Warlocks, built and primed last week. So I could get in another game. Unfortunately, the game fell through. My fault. I didn't have enough free time. We had other stuff going on that day. But I have that, you know, so that's 4 boxes really off of my shelf of shame. So I feel good about that. Playing Age of Sigmar was a good experience. I have some pros and cons. I do feel like the game is, even though it is still technically a you-go-I-go game, the way that, or I-go-you-go, however you want to say it, like 40K is, there's a lot more interactivity, partially because you can both do things in the command phase, because you can still, like, there are orders that you can issue with command points, and there's the way the fight phase works, and because it is a far more melee-focused game, there is some shooting, but not nearly to the extent that 40K has. Because it's a more melee-focused game, it is a lot more interactive. And one other thing that, if you are new to Age of Sigmar and you're coming there from 40K, this will be a little bit of a shock to you. Charging doesn't automatically mean you fight first.
Yeah.
If it's your turn, you get to pick the first unit that fights, but after that, it's all alternating. So, you have to kind of pick and choose your fights and what order you're going to go into. There's more strategy there. Also, all objectives are sticky. There's no like this battle line has the equivalent of objective secured, and it makes objectives sticky. If you control an objective, it's sticky until someone takes it from you. So it encourages you, take an objective, move on. You are encouraged to move on, either to move to capture more objectives, or, okay, I've got this captured, now I'm going to push forward and try to push somebody off another objective, or catch somebody in the middle before they take my objective. So a lot more back and forth, a lot more interaction, but not so much that you feel like your brain's always having to be constantly on, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not to the level of like a full alternating activation game or something like Infinity, where you're constantly having to check for like reactions and And I will say the way the 4th edition Age of Sigmar rules, I think this is the closest thing I have to a con necessarily, is the rules are arranged, especially in the app, in a very odd way. And I think it's because the way they made everything in the game into an ability. Like everything is its own color-coded ability, like even movement. Like, it's a move ability that you use in the movement phase, that you move this unit a number of inches equal to its movement stat, and that's an ability, and everything's broken out. Like, there's no, like, okay, here's the rules for the movement phase, and here's the rules for the charge phase and shooting phase. It's like, well, they have that, but it's also everything's broken out into these weird blocks, which can, it's arranged so differently that it's a little bit harder, I feel like, to get a good sense of the flow. Once you get into it, it's not too bad, but it was just like very jarring because I don't think I've played a game that is arranged that way before. It's very different, and yet similar enough to 40K that it will throw you off sometimes.
Interesting.
And I was playing my Daughters of Cain against Stormcast Eternal's army, played by Derek, our local Chaos Knights player, who's a fantastic painter. He's been doing just an absolutely beautiful job on like these white and purple and gold Stormcast Eternals. Dennis would be proud. He would think it looked fantastic. I got absolutely rolled. I think I lost 19-5. Okay, so I lost 19-5 because it was like there are 5 objectives on the board, and again, they're sticky, and he did a better job of deploying, and he got first turn, and we never had to deal with the whole double turn thing because he got first turn every turn. So and he had a unit. It's okay, so remember when like they did the reveal of Age of Sigmar 4 and there was that like really awesome character on like the giant like Raven Griffin? He was running her, and she hits like a freight train. She would run into a unit and it would not be a unit anymore. It would just die. She did that for like 2 to 3 of my units, which then really put me on the back foot as far as scoring. And like I said, I didn't deploy as well as I probably should have. So on the one hand, yeah, he was pulling ahead on points very quickly, but we were playing like a narrative mission, and there were rules there for like if you're the underdog and you're behind on victory points, you get to roll on this chart and it makes things happen. Like I was making the objectives like cause mortal wounds to him and kill some of his models. So that
cool.
helped, but he was also able to resurrect those models because of what like Regiment of Renown he was playing for his Stormcast. So it didn't do quite as much as I'd hoped, but like having that mechanic, like, oh yeah, you're behind, the game world will actually help you to try to give you a little bit of a catch up. That's a nice mechanic. I liked that. But in the end, even though I lost very badly, I had what they call reinforced units. So like in Age of Sigmar, unit sizes are fixed the way they kind of are in 40K now. But also there's just like, instead of saying like, well, this unit can go from like 5 up to like 15 or 20 or however many you want to throw in, they're just like, okay, this unit is like 10 and you can choose to reinforce it, which means now it's 20. So I had a reinforced unit of witch elves. So 20 witch elves. And witch elves are made of tissue paper because they have like terrible saves and they just have like a 6-up feel no pain effectively. So a lot of the times I could not make saves, and I just had to try to shrug off, like hope I shrug off a couple of wounds here and there. But he didn't have the numbers and number of attacks to do so large a dent into that block that he could really cut down the number of attacks I could make. And one thing this game has that, man, sometimes I wish 40K had is a command, so the equivalent of a stratagem, called rally, and you can rally on every command phase, yours and your opponent's, and it's once per, you can use a particular command like once per phase. So every turn I could rally them, which meant you roll 66, and in my case it was 76 because I had a musician in the squad, because this is a fantasy based game, so you still have like the whole full command thing that you can go with. So I'd get to roll 7 dice. For every 4-up, I could return a model to the unit with 1 wound remaining, and they only have 1 wound base anyway. So every turn I would like, okay, he's killed like 4 for my sisters, or for, for my witch elves. I'll get 4 of them back, and then on my turn I'll get another like 3 back, and so I was able to keep that squad populated. And Daughters of Cain, as you get further into the game, they move faster, they charge more, they attack more, they wound better. By the end, I'm like hitting on 2s with lethal hits, wounding on 3s when I didn't need the lethals, and I was rolling like an orc. I was rolling 60 dice to do all my attacks. At the end of the game, I had tabled him without like 1 block of witch elves.
Wow.
I didn't win, but they were a blender that would not die.
That's awesome.
So more, I will take that as a moral victory, even if I lost the game. So yeah, it's like, I know there are people who say like, well, yeah, 4th edition doesn't have the kind of flavor that past editions had. And I know like going into anytime there's been like a big edition change, going into 8th, we had that issue. Going into 10th, I think we had a little bit of that issue too. But I enjoyed the flow of the game. And we were technically we should have gotten engaged even faster, because we were playing 1,000 points. And on 1,000 points, you're supposed to play on like a 44 by 30 rather than 44 by 60. So we would have been in each other's faces immediately. We still pretty much were, but it would have been even more so. But we were playing on a 44 by 60. It didn't slow the game down that much, honestly. But it may have slowed down my ability to score a little bit, because I couldn't get to the further objectives in his deployment zone, because it just ended up being a big nasty scrum in the middle with this block of witch elves slaughtering everything it touched. But I had a good time. I would absolutely play it again. I don't know if it would become my primary game right now, and that's partially sunk cost fallacy. I've poured a lot of time and energy into 40K, and I'm running 40K narratives and stuff like that on a regular basis. So like, I don't think I would necessarily drop that all. But I would totally be down anytime to play Age of Sigmar. I think it's a good game. I enjoy it. And I would definitely play it casually, but from what I understand, the competitive scene is a bit more chill than the 40K competitive scene.
Yeah, I've
like
heard
the
that
vibe
too.
seems more relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I'm as we said at the beginning, talking about Dennis's birthday, I'm nearing 50. We're all nearing 50, and I don't want to be like, competitive play is a young man's game. But at the same time, it's like, I got 2 kids. I don't feel like chasing the meta. I play to relax. I play, and everybody gets different things. Some people play competitively because that is that's where they get their thrill, and that's totally cool. I'm not poo-pooing that. For me, I feel like I do want the more chill, relaxed games, which is why I do like narrative 40K being a thing that is actively supported. And I feel like Age of Sigmar, even outside of like a Path to Glory kind of narrative, there, whatever, I think that's their equivalent now of Crusade. Even outside of that, I think it would be the more chill game for me. Like I would totally play it just to have fun. And I think that's where Old World would land for me too, because it's like, it's like I would just move blocks around on the troop and run them into each other and just have fun.
Absolutely. Like with my Old World armies, it's like I have all of these like old high elf stuff that I want to use and play, and like don't know if they're good, don't care. Same with Tomb Kings. It's like I wanted a Necrosphinx. I basically started that army because I wanted to buy the Necrosphinx model and be able to use it. Is it good? Maybe. Who knows? I don't care. And the same thing with like my Death Corps of Krieg. It's like there are probably better tanks than the 200-point tank with the giant flamer, but like I don't know. This seems like it fits the army that I'm trying to build. So I'm gonna build the thing that looks cool, and and then go from there. So
yeah, and like same like with the Trader Guard army I want to build eventually. It's like I'm not looking to build a killer guard army. I'm looking to build an army that I think will be fun, have some cool stuff to do. And if it happens to be good, great. If it doesn't, it's like I'm not taking it to a tournament. I want it to be a thing I want to play. When Emperor's Children comes out, I already play Emperor's Children, so I'm ready to slot in and play. Obviously I'll have to rework my list a little bit, I'm sure, but
yeah.
But like I played it at the narrative last year for Midwest Conquest, and I'm looking forward to it. But I would I wouldn't want to take it to a tournament because like the stuff I want to take in my Emperor's Stone Army is probably not what's gonna work for the meta. Regardless of how the army is or isn't, we don't know yet, but I'm sure that what I'm going to take is not going to be like this is, no, you should optimize it and do this. Like, no, I'm not gonna. I will play the army that plays the way I want it to play.
Well, talking to Dave at LVO, like he was in the LVO competitive. At one point, he was in like the top 10 and was like on the borderline of like making top 8, things like that. He was having a good time, but like when he was describing it, I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, that sounds freaking exhausting. Like just being on at that level for potentially 3 days, like that's crazy. When I go to an event like LVO or the Grand Narrative or any of like the US Opens and stuff like that, I want to go there to like hang out and meet people. I want to play games, but like it's also like a social event. It's an opportunity to hang out, talk about the game, meet people, have fun. And like to me, that being at that level of competition, that much pressure, that's not fun for me anymore.
Yeah. It's like I've done competitive card gaming in the past. Like back before I got back into 40K, there was a stretch there where I played a lot of Legend of the Five Rings was like my Legend of the Five Rings, and then also Dragon Ball Z, the Dragon Ball Z card game. I actually entered in a tournament for that, and I think the DBZ one, I want to say I took second at one of our local tournaments. And what I noticed about that was the first game wasn't, it was fun. My deck was good. I was happy with it. I knew how to pilot it. I had a good time. The second and third games and fourth games, as the stakes went up and as the pressure got higher and as the requirement for tighter play got higher, I was still keeping up with it and I was still doing fine. But by the end, I lost that last game. It was close. And I was exhausted. Mentally, I was wiped. I didn't come out of it with that sense of, adrenaline, and I feel great. I came out of it with I never want to do that again. There was a Legend of the Five Rings tournament where I think I took second or third. I may have even won that one. God, it's been decades. But it's like at the end of it, it's like I did not enjoy myself. I think I did well, and then it kind of I showed I can do that. I don't want to now. I'm good. I've got my taste of competitive play, and I'm walking away. And I think with 40K, I'm kind of at that same spot.
And
although I didn't prove, I think the closest thing I did to proving it is I've gotten best of faction a couple of times, usually by playing a faction that nobody else is. But default. Hey,
fair enough.
But
two
Show
best
Me
words in
Showdown
English language.
Show Me Showdown, the first year of 10th edition, I took best Tau. And so I showed I can do it. I don't want to now.
Well, to follow up on your point there of leaving an event exhausted and competitive play, when I go to the Grand Narrative or when I go to the US Opens or LVO narrative, I leave there with 5 new army ideas. Or I'm like, oh, I want to build that. I would love to build that. Ooh, I could do this kit bash. I leave those events with much more energy and enthusiasm for the hobby than when I came in. And that's what I want out of this. That's what I want out of events at this point in my life is I want to go there and see other cool ideas and see what I can do and have fresh ideas to build an army going forward, or to, enthusiasm to paint and build. It's almost like the energy vampire thing, I guess, where it's I want to go to these events to replenish my enthusiasm for this hobby, and my ability to want to talk about things and build things. So
yeah,
I never quite got that out of competitive.
Yeah, seeing awesome painted armies and going, I'm not painting that well. I need to keep working on it, and I actually do manage to get motivation to work harder at painting.
Yeah. And what's really cool for me is not only getting that vibe for myself, and I do get that, like when we finish one of our league nights for our narrative league, I'm excited. Like everybody's excited to see what the next game is going to be like. What mission are we going to be playing next time? And so like that really feels good. But also we've got people who are they're just starting. Like we've got a guard player who's just been starting into the game, and he's been building up his guard army like week by week, month by month, and it's just like seeing that kind of energy of somebody excited to get in, and also knowing these games have no stakes. Like
Yes.
we get like store credit at the end because everybody kind of pays in to help support the store, but like there's no tournament prize at the end. There's no hard feelings. People are playing the games and having fun and coming back energized, and like seeing new players excited to be playing and getting that, like seeing them like not like if they lost their game, they're not demoralized because they've been crushed by somebody who is a superior hardcore player with a more optimized army. They played the mission, they lost, like, well, I'm going to get you next week. And that is such a cool energy to see. We have another player who, when he started out, he had just switched from like Tyranids to Dark Angels. And he was like all in on Dark Angels, and he was having a lot of fun with that. And then Deathcore Krieg got announced, and he's like, "Oh no, that's what I got to do." And so he's been doing the same thing you do, where it's like jumping from army to army, and he's just been building up and getting all into it. And yeah, it's just like seeing that kind of energy, not because somebody's chasing the meta, but because this is the cool thing that they want to do, and they're liking it and loving it, and they want to do that more. Yeah, it's that gives me hobby life. I was burning out on 40K before I got involved in this narrative league, and this gave me back exactly what I needed. And so, yeah, it's like if competitive is your thing, that's fantastic. Go forth and do. You have our blessing. We have friends who are deep into the competitive scene. That's not us anymore. We kind of, we dipped our toes in it for a while there. We swam around with the sharks. Kevin, you got eaten by them more than once.
Yep. Yep. I realized what it was going to take for me to get to that level, and I have no interest in playing 40K that way.
Right.
I'm much happier doing what I'm doing right now, which is building weird themed lists and kit bashes and making up my own contradictory fluff. So
I think in the end, like the way we've been talking about all this, even with us saying like, hey, we don't think you should buy the limited edition Chaos Codexes, but hey, like I said, we're not your banker, we're not your accountant, we're not your parents. If that's what you want to do, if that's how you enjoy the hobby, having those collectibles, do that. If you're playing one game and then you see another one pop up, whether it's Age of Sigmar or Old World, or hell, like maybe you discover BattleTech is your jam or Marvel Crisis Protocol, don't feel bad. Like do the hobby the way you want to do the hobby.
Yeah.
And if it's 40K and you love 40K, but like a certain aspect of play turns you off, the great thing is the game is big enough and there's enough players out there, and that you will find people who have your vibe and are doing the game the way you want to do the game. You don't have to force it. Just, look around, talk to people, and you'll find your community. You'll find your vibe. And I think the fact that this hobby is so large that it can fit so many different styles of players into it, even within a single game, and even more so amongst the wide spectrum of games that are out there. And if you want something that's even a bit different, I know I've kind of poo-pooed it on the podcast in the past, but like if you like the models but you can't stand the rules for 40K, there's plenty of agnostic games out there. If you poke at one-page rules, if that's your vibe, if that's your jam, I've seen people say like, I don't want to keep up with the constant churn in rules. I want to just be able to slam minis with my friends, in an afternoon. If that's it, do it. If you want to play an older edition of 40K because you can't stand 10th edition, and you got people who will play it. Like we said for a while, like fantasy's not dead unless you want it to be. Now, granted, they did bring it back, but hey, if you like, I tried Old World and I like Old Fantasy better. Guess what? The armies still work for both. Play it.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you can find the people, and if you can't find the people easily, I know it's more effort, but start a community. Like, find if you start out with a couple of people, because I will tell you, the narrative league I'm playing in right now started out because a couple of guys who are in-laws like got into it at first and started playing a little bit. And they're like, they came from like a D&D background. They played D&D together, and they're like, we like this, but we went to play at a store that does like tournament stuff, and that wasn't our style. So we came to another store and we just started playing, and we found other people who went to the store who were like, oh, I like playing that way too. And they like, you just start doing it, and it'll build, and it'll ebb and flow. Think people will have lives that change. We've had some players who have had to drop out because they got like their job changed what hours they have, and they can't make league nights anymore. And we tried to work around what we can, but people are going to have a time, like they're going to play a session and they're like, this isn't my game. I'm going to switch. I've been looking at this other game, and that's fine because that's their hobby. But if you keep with it, you will foster a core of people, and other people will come in, see that energy, and then you'll have, hey, I want to get into that. And you can foster, so it's like the hobby's huge, and you will always find, if you're willing to put not even a ton of work in. I put probably more work in to doing what I do with this narrative league than probably I need to, because I'm the weirdo who's like, okay, yeah, I like these missions, but I want them to look more like the missions that come out of White Dwarf. So I'm going to build my own document template and my own Photoshop tool, like my own Photoshop file for building custom maps and things like that. And I'm going to find some artwork that I can use and make it look as much like the original, like the ones in White Dwarf as I can. I don't need to do that. I absolutely don't. I was just doing like basic stripped down ones with copy pasted graphics from like other GW projects that people had scanned. I took images off Wahapedia. I did that thing, and it was fine.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that the person who like runs a 40K podcast and has put on like a GT level event in the past is going to overdo things? I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it.
But I just like I wanted to up my game a little bit, and it was also a chance to like see, can I do it?
Yeah,
and
yeah, absolutely.
So it's like you don't have to. Like, what I'm saying is, you don't have to put in that level of effort if you don't feel up to it, if you don't have the space and bandwidth in your life. I know things in the world are kind of crazy right now, and not everybody's got that level of bandwidth right now. For me, doing stuff like that is an escape from all the crazy. So absolutely. Like the other thing I've been doing, and this is what I like to call a segue, is I've been reading a lot. Like my partners encouraged me to read more for years, and I will from time to time I'll read a book, maybe read a couple of books, and I'll feel really good, and then something will come up and I'll get distracted and I won't do that. This year I have decided to really focus on reading, and one of the things I did was I've been I love 40K novels. I love Black Library novels. And one series that I've been wanting to read more of, I had read the first 3 or 4 books in the past. It's the Gaunt's Ghost series by Dan Abnett, who, first off, Dan Abnett, fantastic writer. Really nice guy, too. We've actually met him at the last Games Day back in 2013, and I have an autographed copy of the Eisenhorn omnibus from him. No, just fantastic writer, right up there with he's kind of like their OG fantastic writer, because he's been writing the Gaunt's Ghost series for like 20 years. I mean, it's a lot. And fortunately, I was able to find over time the first 4 books at half-price books and like the original paperback, like US paperback releases. GW has a bad habit of not reprinting books, unfortunately, and when they do reprint them, they reprint them as like, here's this $40 limited print to order, like large paperback, and I'm like, I don't want to spend $40 on one novel. That's a bit much, but I have been able to, like, I was able to find books, I think 5 through, let's see which ones. I've got one of them here right now. I was able to find books 5 through 11 on eBay, and with some careful eBay shopping, I was able to spend no more than like $9 or $10 a book. Nice. So, which is close to retail price. Like the original retail price on reading Armor of Contempt right now, which is book 10. It was $8. So I'm close to retail, which is not bad for a book that's out of print. Even if they're not in the most pristine condition, they are perfectly readable, and that's what matters. In the last month, I've burned through about a book a week. They're 300 to 400 pages long. Fantastic reads, great characters. It's a fantastic ensemble cast that keeps growing and getting winnowed away because war is bad and things happen. And there's a lot of different types of war covered. Again, like I think this is like something around like a 15, 16 book series, not counting the various short story collections that are related to it. I only have books up through 11 because then you get into, like, it's broken into sections, and you can get those sometimes as omnibuses. So there's the Founding, which is the first 3 books, which is Ghostmaker, First and Only, and Necropolis. Then there's the Saint, which is books 4 through 8. Yeah, or no, books 4 through 7. So Honor Guard, Guns of Tanith, Straight Silver, and Sabbat Martyr. And that's all. So like the first one, the Founding, is about like how they came to be, how they, like, some of their first really big battles that kind of changed the makeup of the unit. And then the Saint is all about this campaign revolving around an imperial, a set of worlds that was originally like conquered and settled by like an Adeptus Sororitas Saint, and the fight to reclaim those worlds or keep them from falling to chaos, and the mystical things that kind of happen around that. And then there's the next set is The Lost, which is what I'm reading now, where it's kind of revolving around a world that has fallen to chaos and the fight to get it back and deal with the trauma both of the people there and the people who go to fight there. And then the last set is called The Victory, and that's actually broken into 2. Like there's the Victory Part 1 and Victory Part 2, because in each one is like 2 novels. Those are the ones where they're still like $20 to $30 a book, and I don't know when I'm going to get to those. But it's a fantastic series. They read really fast. And like when I say they cover different styles of war, so this is like the main thing is it's the Tanith First and Only. And the reason they're the First and Only was because they were their first, like the first 3 regiments that the world of Tanith sent to the Imperial Guard were mustered and ready to ship out the day that Chaos decided to declare Exterminatus on their planet. And you were like, Chaos Exterminatus? Yes, they blow up planets too. We're no better. And only the first regiment was able to get off planet. And so these are the last survivors of the planet of Tanith, and their expertise is as scouts. So they are like stealth troopers, and there's a lot about like the culture that they bring with them. And then as they go through, like they're losing people, and then they fight a war on the planet of Vergast, and they bring in like a bunch of people who basically formed public militias to defend their cities, and roll a bunch of them into the Tanith First. And you get a little bit more of that as the story progresses, where like they get reinforcements from other groups, and there's the bit of the cultural meshing there. There's like an entire book that's about trench warfare. And it's like World War I era trench warfare, and it's depressing as hell. History sucks. We talked about that with the Deathcore Krieg.
Yeah.
It's still true.
Oh, that's actually sorry. That actually just reminds me. In the Deathcore of Krieg episode, we did talk about how they were like based off of German World War One troops.
Yes, yeah.
And that is incorrect. That was a misspeak. It is basically Snipe and Wib described them in one of their last Codex compliant episodes. Basically described them as all World War One troops thrown into a blender. So there are elements of German World War One, there's elements of French World War One, but it is very much World War One depressing. It's amazing that the lore for the Deathcore of Krieg somehow manages to be more depressing than World War One. But yeah. So quick clarification on that. Wanted to get that out.
Yeah, we had a history buff in the Discord who kind of called us on that, and it's like, no, you're right.
Fair.
You're right.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair. And again, join our Discord. We love having conversations like that and getting called out by like, oh yeah, you should have done that differently. So that is in let's see, which one was that? I think that is in Straight Silver. That's Straight Silver. Guns of Tanith is one where it's all about like paratrooper drops. And that's its own special kind of hell, especially into a world where Promethium has been mined so long that the atmosphere itself has become toxic. So fun. There's a book that's all about a fighting retreat and a last defense. That's that one is Honor Guard. That one's got some fantastic tank battles at the end. There's a couple of them that have city to city fighting. Trader General has some great and also depressing behind enemy lines action. So it's like whatever your particular style of military fiction is, or what aspect of it calls to you, there's probably a Gaunt's Ghosts book that talks about it. So if you can get your hands on these, I highly recommend them. They're fantastic reads. And it's interesting reading these, which are very grim and gritty and serious, although there's some good comic moments and good lines and to kind of help break the ice a bit and relieve tension. Reading these and then the Caiaphas Cain books, it's like tonally they could not be more different. And yet they're still both fantastic. And I also like the fact that they're both about commissars who don't just going around shooting everybody in the head. It's like the most successful commissars are the ones who don't. Go fig.
That doesn't seem right.
Yeah. One thing I do find interesting though is that the Gaunt's Ghosts models, they did they were originally kind of like a Black Library thing that they just decided to keep in print. But the Gaunt's Ghosts models are still available and they're still in the Astra Militarum Codex. Now, the reason I bring this up, it's not that they're not cool. They're fantastic models, and the rules for them are neat, and it's fun, the idea of being able to throw them into an army and like, oh, look, Tanith first and only, yes. What is interesting is that we have characters who get left out of codexes now because they have died. The storyline has moved on. Commissar Yarrick is probably one of the biggest examples, but also like Anva, who we saw get killed in like a past storyline bit, but they've kept him around as like an engram hologram thing. So he's still technically around, but like we have characters who have died in the storyline. We don't have Ursakar Creed anymore because he disappeared during the whole Fall of Cadia thing, and so now we have Ursula Creed, his daughter, who is now an adult and leading troops. She's like an older adult now. She's like in her 50s or 60s, or the 40K equivalent, because people live longer when they don't get shot in that universe. Sure. But what's interesting is, if I'm going to put on my Black Library pedant goggles now for a second, is that these books are set in like the 700s M41. The reason that matters is the Fall of Cadia is like at the very end, like 998, 999 M41. Technically, the Indominus Crusade after that goes for like a couple hundred years. So we're technically at like 200 something M42. the Gaunt's ghosts should be long dead by now. Like, those characters would, I mean, yes, humans live longer when they don't get killed. These people are in a war zone. Their chance of death is not zero. And in fact, a couple of the characters featured in those models die during the books. I will not say which ones are in what books. I do not wish to spoil it for you. But I know all those characters don't make it to the end. So it's weird to me that you can still run Gaunt's Ghosts as the Gaunt's Ghost characters in 40K now, when we have other characters who have since crossed the Rainbow Bridge and been lost to us.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, and we know the real reason is, well, those are in plastic and those others were in metal and fine cast, and unless they get new models, they don't like poor Karandras for the Phoenix Lord who isn't now, because they didn't bother releasing a model for him because maybe they forgot because it's a kill team squad.
Ugh, that is wild to me.
Yeah. And yet Kodiaz, who is also like several hundred years old at this point, still kicking, even though they gave him a terrible model.
Yep.
And the reason I say this is just as a little bit of aside, people who get caught up on, you can't have that model, it's not canon, or, well, the canon didn't say this, so you can't have this, female custodes. Yes, you can, because Games Workshop themselves doesn't care that much.
Right. That's kind of the secret sauce of 40K, is that canon doesn't. Everything is canon and nothing is canon. So.
Right. It's like technically the canon says there are no female Space Marines. If you want to have female Space Marines, do it. Go for it. If you want to have female custodes, go for it. If you don't want to have female custodes in your army, don't be a dick about it, but that's fine too. You don't have to.
If you want to make up an entire army of Tau models that are fell to chaos, you can do that.
Yeah. It's like, if you want to read the Arcs of Omen books and said, yeah, I like this, but I wish it went the other way, do that. Kevin did, and it's won him prizes.
Yeah.
So again, kind of going back, I think the theme of this episode is the hobby is yours.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk to other people about it, but find the joy in the hobby you want to have. And again, like all this stuff, at the end of the day, it's all fiction, and it doesn't matter. Just have fun.
For sure.
But also pay us on Patreon so we continue doing this thing that doesn't matter about the thing that doesn't matter.
Give us money.
I mean, you could spend that $200+ on a limited edition codex, or hear me out.
Yeah, I mean, you could give us 200. You could give us $200 a month on Patreon, and I don't know, we'll come to your house and make you dinner. I don't know. If somebody were to do something like that, we'll figure out something.
I will make you an amulet of FOMO. It's not going to be pretty, but I'll make you one.
3D printer. I'm sure
that's
I could.
True. Yeah. That's true. You know what? I've got a 3D printer. $200 a month, I will make you an amulet of FOMO, and I'll make sure you get all 4 parts.
I'll make you a different one each month. Hell,
you will miss out on nothing, I promise. In all seriousness, segue into the Patreon spiel. Yes, we do have a Patreon that helps support the show, keeps us income neutral. We're not asking you for $200 a month. We're not asking you for $200 a month, but it's far from required. We don't have tiers or anything. Like, if you give us $200 a month, you don't get anything beyond what you'd get for $1 a month, other than maybe the amulet of FOMO. The medallion of FOMO should you go that route. I mean, I don't want to say we won't do it.
Yeah, I'm not going to rule anything out.
You want to give us that much money? It's like, But no, seriously, even $1 a month, it all adds up and it helps pay for our recording service and our web hosting. And like I said, it keeps us income neutral. Because there's a lot of little costs involved with this that do add up and accumulate, and so basically you our listeners help make this show possible, and we really are thankful for that. So patreon.com/preferred enemies, you can join the preferred frenemies. It's again $1 a month. If you want to give more, that's fantastic. Don't feel any obligation. But that does get you access to our Discord. I am working on, I've got a couple of other projects in the works right now, but one of them is I am working on finalizing the Urban Conquest missions redone for 10th edition and reformatted to look nice and pretty. Like I said, I put too much work into it. That will be coming for patrons soon, but it's not out yet. But it is a project I am currently working on. But yeah, that and other perks, and just a fantastic community of people to chat with and build each other up and share our, like, hobby progress and little victories and things like that. We'd love to have you there. So yeah, patreon.com/preferred enemies. Also, if you want to rep Preferred Enemies with merch, we have our merch store at preferredenemies.com/merch. And we've got our Preferred Enemies logo, where we've got our Anxious Commissar shirt that I talked about last time. We've got mugs, we've got magnets, we've got shirts of all different types and sizes. We even have a shirt specifically for people who are big and or tall. And one of our big and tall patrons picked one up to try it out, and he says, it's, as long as he doesn't do jumping jacks, it is long enough to keep him fully covered. So it is hard finding a service that has shirts that size. I will say that, but yes, and people have vouched the quality is good. The products ship. We did some revisions. We've got a service now that ships very quickly and produces good quality product. So we would love to have see more Preferred Enemy stuff out in the wild. Again, no obligation, but it's there if you want it. So I think with this, that we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Like I said, this has been a little bit of a show about everything and nothing, but in the end, from all of us here at Preferred Enemies, I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
And Richard.
Good night, good gaming, and remember, your hobby is your own. Have fun with it the way you want to have fun with it.